have been brought up in army cantonments. My father was an army officer, and he was an armored corps officer. Initially, 65 first light cavalry, and then he moved on to 16 cavalry. So throughout my childhood, till I joined my engineering college, I spent all my initial years in army cantonments all over the country with my father. And my father inculcated a lot of discipline into me, a lot of punctuality into me, like normally army is known for. And when I look back, this was such a great attributes which I got just because of being an army officer, that it has really helped me in my career tremendously. Those days, like I took to 7 different cities to complete my 10+2, and those we were feeling very it was difficult looking that midway during the classes you are suddenly transferred from Pathankot to Ahmednagar, or Ahmednagar to Jodhpur, or Jodhpur to Faizapur, or Tezpur to Assam. You're traveling all over the country, and it was looking very difficult those days. Sometimes we would cry that we have to just move around like this every 2 years. But that when you look back, it was a tremendous experience. And after that, like when I came to Maharashtra cadre from Chandigarh, I got a cadre in 1989. Uh, I never felt out of place in Maharashtra, because I was the one who'd been traveling around since I was maybe 3-4 years old. And then I had done my engineering in electronics and communication engineering from this deemed university, Thapar Engineering College in Patiala. And I was after that, immediately once I graduated in July 87, in Jan 88 I appeared for IAS, and I was lucky to get in the first attempt, and at a pretty young age. And since then, from 18, then mine was 89 batch, because in IAS it takes about 16 months to from the prelim exams to the entering the Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy in Mussoorie. And after 2 years training, right from 1991 till 2013, I was in my cadre without a 24 hours gap. Also, I remained in my cadre continuously, because Maharashtra is a great state. In between, I just did 3 years stints in Government of India, 13 to 16, and 16 again I came back, and since then I'm working in my state cadre. And I would say that this has been a great journey for the last 32 years. And I am lucky that I got a lot of opportunities in Maharashtra. In fact, in IAS, people always script that they keep on getting transferred here and there every 6 months, 1 year. You'll be surprised that I had 5 tenures, each of 4 years. Like for example, from 92 to 96, I was Chief Executive Officer of Zilla Parishad, which is equivalent of Additional Collector or ADC or CDO in UP, or Deputy Development Commissioner in Karnataka. We call it Chief Executive Officer. Then after that, I was 8 years, I worked as collector, 4 years in Aurangabad, 4 years in Thane districts. Then I worked for 4 years as State Excise Commissioner. Then I worked for 4 years, 2 months as State Irrigation Secretary. We call it Water Resources Department. So 20 years, just went in 5 assignments. And these are all field assignments where we were rubbing shoulders with our elective honorable MLAs, honorable MPs, honorable ministers, day and night. And I didn't find any difficulty. So many times I feel surprised when people say that your transfer or posting is the biggest threat to you. I believe that if you keep on doing well, nobody touches you. Everybody wants somebody who delivers. And I always tell people that in 8 years of my collectorship, from 96 to 2004 December, I worked under 5 different chief ministers and all governments. For example, 96 to 99, we had Shiv Sena BBG government. Then Congress government came, Congress NCP, and I worked under 5 chief ministers. But I didn't even have a 24 hours gap in my 8 years of tenure. Everybody continued me. And then for a brief period, I went to Government of India, because in IAS, if you don't do central government deputations, then you are not empaneled as additional secretaries and secretaries. So that was one of the main reasons I opted to go to Government of India, and I was lucky to be Joint Secretary Union Territories, and I was OSD to Home Minister of India also that time. In October 2004, when the government changed in Maharashtra and BJP came to power, the main plank was the big irrigation alleged scam which had happened in Maharashtra in 2009, 10, 11, 12. And then there was a High Court monitored SIT, which was looking into so-called alleged 70,000 crore scam, which has happened. And when the new government came to power, there was a lot of issues in the department. Number of engineers were arrested, the contractors were arrested and put in jail. More than 100 engineers had inquiries against them. And so when I landed back in Maharashtra in 2016, the government was just about 14, 15 months old. And the department was virtually lying shut because there was so much of turmoil in the department. And then immediately the Honorable Chief Secretary, Honorable CM that time, they put me as the Water Resources Secretary. The department didn't have funds from 2009 to 2016. The projects had lapsed. There were no approvals. The engineers were demoralized. The contractors were in jail. So department was lying shut down, and Water Resources, very big department in Maharashtra with 57,000 employees, 10,000 graduate engineers. We have more than 3,300 dams completed in Maharashtra. That time we had 350 irrigation projects and dams under construction worth 1,50,000 crore rupees of balance investment to be done. And department budget was just about 4,000 crores every year. And even for this 1,50,000 crore, 10% escalation would mean 15,000 crores. So department was in shambles. But then Honorable Chief Minister Mr. Devendra Fadnavis, I salute him. He did a great job that time. And both of us, we would go to Government of India, make presentations to Prime Minister's office, Water Resources Department. We got 20,000 crore in Pradhan Mantri Krishi Sinchai Yojana. We got another 15,000 crore in one scheme, the Bali Raja scheme. For the first time, we made a list of 110 irrigation projects fully owned by the state government, and we went to Government of India to fund them. It has never happened. It is unprecedented, but we got our way through. We told the Government of India that Maharashtra has so much issue of farmer suicide. More than 5,000 farmers are committing suicide every year. And these projects, if they're completed, they will bring water to almost 10 lakh acres, 4 lakh hectares. And the state government doesn't have money. So as a special case, the Government of India sanctioned them from their own kitty. And in those 4 years, we could complete 152 irrigation projects by putting in 62,000 crore rupees. And the irrigation command area of Maharashtra, the actual area under irrigation, the field level, went from 32 lakh hectare to 40 lakh hectare. This 8 lakh increase was almost 25% of what happened in the last 70 years. It happened in 4 years. So from a department which was scam tainted, we got the National Water Award in 2018. Again, we got National Water Award in 2019. Then we got the Best Irrigation Management State Award in 2020, one after another. And those days, even now, to beat states like Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh, who are pioneers in many irrigation techniques, it was a great honor. And these two National Water Awards are like the Bharat Ratnas of irrigation department, the Water Resources Department. And that was a very professionally satisfying, challenging, and when you look back at a great assignment, and that is what threw me into this. If I had not performed well there, I may not have been the commissioner of MCGM. 8 lakh hectare additional irrigation, which we added, it means water reached the fields of farmers. This 8 lakh hectares, 20 lakh acres. And in 20 lakh acres, with the folding of 2-3 acres per farmer, virtually you have 10 lakh families, with 50 lakh people, half a crore people, who virtually came out of this vicious circle of constant droughts, and then prompted to commit suicides. This has been a major achievement, and we completed irrigation dams which were started in 1984-85, and and one thing more, none of the 152 irrigation project which we completed started after 2008-9, because after 2008-9 there was zero project was started in Maharashtra. From 2009 to 2016, not even a single project was started, because all the 6-7 years went in this inquiries and allegations and SITs. And then if you remember, that time our deputy CM had to resign, white paper came up, and then High Court took over, and all sort of unfortunate things happened. So we had zero projects between 2009 and 2016. So these 152 projects were all started between 1984 and 2004-2005 primarily. So, but to complete, and each irrigation project itself is like building a township. With you have hundreds of kilometer canals involved, dams involved, land acquisitions involved. We acquired something like 16,000 hectares of land, 40,000 acres. We brought in policy of direct purchase, no land acquisition. We said we'll go to the farmer like a private individual, buyer and seller. We'll give 4 times the market value, and you come to the sub-register office, take the check and sign here. So we brought in the new revolution in land acquisition, and we acquired 40,000 acres of land in just my tenure. Now, if I go to villages, if I go to small towns, everybody knows me, but nobody knew me in urban areas. And but because Maharashtra is a very fertile black soil, which has a lot of water retention capability, and once you give a farmer a water, it's a gold mine. Then water is a lifeline for any growth. And we were the projects which we did were catering to commercial, to industrial, to drinking water, to irrigation, and that has been very satisfying for me, that we could turn around such a major challenge of farmer suicide in Maharashtra. I would mention a couple of issues which are really imperative to any success in public life. Because in public life, especially in our service, we are working in a lot of gray areas where stakeholders are immense. And you're always open to criticism. Nothing is 2 + 2 4. Everywhere you take a decision and move on. So you need to have very strong risk appetite. You should be able to take big risks if you want to do some change in public administration. For example, in irrigation, when I joined, we had 94 irrigation projects worth 9,000 crore rupees, which were under deep investigation of Anti-Corruption Bureau, and I didn't have the files with me. The files were all taken away by the Anti-Corruption Bureau department. Now, how do I work there? Neither the contractor is available who has to perform the work, he's in jail, nor the engineer is available who is either in the jail or he's too demoralized to carry on the work, because he thinks that if I make some additional payment with additional work, the ACB will catch him also. I went to the Honorable Chief Minister. I said, sir, let us do one major surgery. In those days, other scam had happened in Maharashtra in 2009-10. I said, these 94 projects, like 494 other buildings standing, they will never get completed. And for 20 years also, they will be just facing inquiries, and projects will just linger on, and people won't get water, and everybody will be frustrated. So he said, what do you do? I said, sir, let us terminate these projects all midway. And we have a clause of foreclosure of tenders. And you have to be very positive. You don't have to be vindictive. I said, sir, he said, people will go to court for 9,000 crore. They will claim 20,000 crores of damages if you take this step. I said, sir, let us do one thing. Let us be positive. Let us not blacklist these people. Let us not lodge affairs against them. Let us not get after them. Whatever is happening, let it continue. Law takes its own course. We invite these contractors, and we'll do physical joint measurements, and we'll do physical closure, financial closure, whatever work has happened. We'll pay them off, and we'll clear the past baggage, and we will invite bids afresh and complete the remaining portion of these projects. And I said, even if these contractors go to High Court, I said, what case they have? We'll tell the High Court that we have not blacklisted them, we have not prosecuted them, we have not lodged any fresh affair against them. They are free to compete again. In fact, we have paid them for whatever they have done. Otherwise, the payment won't have come for 20 years. And I said, in this process, we'll tell the High Court what the grievance is. And foreclosure is a right in the tender. Every tender has got a foreclosure clause. So that is our right. So I convinced the Honorable CM, I convinced the State Cabinet, and one fine day in September 16, we cancelled this 9,000 crore worth of tenders in single day, which is unprecedented in the country. And that is what led to new tenders and completion of the 94 projects. Everybody was happy. No stakeholder was unhappy in this. And in fact, then Honorable CM made a public statement. He said we had made a commitment to our electorate that if we come to power, we will cancel these projects. Look, we have done it. Even they were also happy for what I did. And then similarly, you should have very like in COVID also. I always say, yesterday I had talked with Singapore stock investors for 3 hours in the evening. I said, we are the only one city in the entire world where we had, where no test report of COVID positive flows directly from the lab to the patient. All those come to us in line list at midnight, and we, through a ward war room, we announce to the patient, we visit the homes and lot beds at home. Now just imagine, we handled 730,000 reports in this fashion, where we had disconnected the lab from the patient. And just imagine, even a few labs reports would have gone missing, the patient wouldn't have got treatment, because he wouldn't get a COVID bed. He couldn't have got admission in hospital because he had no report. He wouldn't have got treated. And if even a few of them would have died, they would have sued us. That because of Mr. Chahal's order, we didn't get COVID positive report, and in timely treatment didn't happen, and our relative, our so-and-so passed away. So he should be sued for his death. Look at the kind of risky decision we took. But we maintained rather sharp accuracy, and there's not a single complaint till today of 7.3 lakh cases of anybody not getting a report. Not even, although we did it last June, but not even one city in India or anywhere in the world, to my knowledge, have copied our idea, because there's a lot of risk involved. You need a lot of hard work and you need a lot of accuracy in this. But there is no panic in the city, because at midnight, when all the reports like 11,000 positive came, except us, nobody in the city knew who's positive. And next morning, these 11,000 were visited by a 24 ward room, 240 doctors, 240 ambulances. And from home, we picked them up and put them in the hospital beds. So we have been avoiding that panic. And at 8 o'clock, we break open to the patient in the morning that you're COVID positive. By 8:30, we are at his home with a bed. So here also, you see, look at the risk we took, the risk appetite we had, that the reports shall not be shared from the lab to the patient. People went to Honorable Supreme Court of India against us. They said it is a patient right to get the report. We convinced the Supreme Court that, look, our turnaround time is just 16 hours maximum. Somebody getting tested at 8 p.m., we go to his home at 8 in the morning. Which city in India has turnaround time of 16 hours for COVID reports to reach the patient? It doesn't matter if it's going through us or directly. So ultimately, till today morning, that system is going on. So secondly, in public life, unless you have a risk appetite, you can't really perform and produce results. Next is, you have to be highly optimistic. I addressed 182 IAS officers of 2019 batch in Mussoorie Academy, our Lal Bahadur Shastri Academy, last month. So there were 182 of them, 2019 batch. Now recently, last month, they have been now posted as SDMs and deputy collectors all over the country. I told them also, I said, in public life is so difficult to deliver. People come with 20-year, 30-year, 40-year-old their land issues, which people come with the huge files, hundreds or reminders, work still not done. I said, unless you have a bent of mind and you have a resolve that if 10 people meet me today, I'm going to try and make sure that 10 out of 10 work gets done. And I'll put myself into the shoes that if I was in his place, who's coming here and nth time for the same work, how would I feel if my work is not done and if my work is done? And unless you have that type of attitude, still we won't be able to help everybody. Maybe still only 3 or 4 or 5 out of 10 you will be able to help, because it is so difficult to help and the issues are so complicated. But I said, if you are highly optimistic, if you're highly positive, and if you're this kind of attitude, then you may partly succeed. But if you see, look at people's suspicion, and if you are little callous, then nothing is to happen. 10 or 10 people won't be helped. So next attribute in public life is that you have to be aggressively positive, and you have to be highly optimistic. So being an optimist, being positive, taking risk, and believing that anything is possible, all these things really help you.